Hey everybody, this is Andre. I'm one of the co-founders and CEO at Incognia. It's a pleasure to be here to cover this webinar about deepfakes and AI image fraud. And I want to invite Eduardo to join us here to participate on this webinar as well.
Hello, everybody. Good morning for most of you. Good afternoon for the ones in Latin America. Good night for the ones in Asia. It's a pleasure to be here, sharing more about deepfakes and AI-generated fraud that we are seeing increasing a lot in the past few months.
So before we jump into the content and cover the agenda here, just wanted to start by sharing why we're going to be having this conversation, right? So a few weeks ago, Eduardo was actually playing with some of the tools to create deepfakes, and he posted on LinkedIn one of the results of those experiments, and that went viral. So it was a video in which he was using Will Smith as the character, and the quality of that deepfake was just really impressive. That video got 5 million views, lots of comments. It was reposted across multiple social media platforms, not only LinkedIn, but on X, on TikTok, on Facebook. And a lot of people were really impressed with the quality of that deepfake, and even journalists. So we were like having like interviews with multiple networks, and this is gaining a lot of attention. So we decided to have a deeper conversation about it, how we use those tools to create such a high quality deepfake. So that's why we're going to be talking about this here, because of how easy it was, also because of like how impressive it was, but also, and more importantly, how dangerous it could be to multiple businesses that are using images and videos to verify the authenticity of users, for example, asking for refunds, insurance claims, or going through identity verification processes. Like all of these things that rely on images to gain trust on a user and execute something are vulnerable to this. So covering the agenda here really quickly. So Eduardo will start by covering how he has created those deepfakes, what was the process, how easy it was. Then he's going to cover some of the consequences to businesses on like what are end users and fraudsters doing with these capabilities. And then finally, he is going to cover how this is being executed, right? So how are the fraudsters being able to take these deepfakes and really inject them into different types of systems so that they can take advantage of this new technology, right? And then at the second half here of this webinar, I'll be covering some other things, including voice cloning, the latest on agentic AI driven fraud. So we're also going to talk a little bit more about agents, which are also on the rise. And then we're going to do a quick wrap up and open some space for a Q&A. So Eduardo, feel free to take it away here and share more about your story with deepfakes.
Sure. Thank you, Andre. So for the audience, and especially the ones who hadn't had the chance yet to see the Will Smith deepfake, here's the video. It's 19 seconds, just saying hi, smiling a little bit, doing the movement of a facial biometric, open the mouth, and then getting really close to the camera where you can see the wrinkles on the brow, and it's kind of impressive. And the thing is, Andre, I'm not a video maker, and it didn't take me more than a few hours to get into this level. It was just a matter of like purchasing a few tools, paying for the credits, and start testing. I was actually ready to do this deepfake with several different famous person. So if you go to any AI model tool, you can basically take a picture of you and share and say, can you just mimic myself with somebody else's face? Let's say Will Smith. And so whenever you have the Will Smith in the same clothes of you, it's just a matter of going to another tool and then say, Will Smith, mimic the video that I'm just uploading.
And
So
Eduardo, just a quick question here. So you're talking about using these tools, but you really didn't have to like spend any time like coding anything, right?
no, not at all. Although I could code, and although I'm a programmer myself, university and bachelor in computer science, no code was required here. Just a few prompts in Gemini, and then another two to help me mimicking the Will Smith into the video. So, as I was saying, I was pretty ready to do that video and post pretending to be LeBron James, Steph Curry, Tom Brady, and Will Smith, the ones that went viral with over 5 million views. And beyond the buzz itself, Andre, I was kind of impressed how many comments we got explaining different reasons why this is not so scary. Although a lot of people were scary, most of them were just saying, hey, but this is not live camera. What about putting the three fingers in front of your face? This will not bypass a QIC or a security check, and etc. I was like, all right, let's take the challenge of some of those comments, and then let's get this one, for example. But you also have to sound like Will Smith when note this word, when image and video sync with the voice models, it will be truly scary. Speaking in the future, and that's the first thing. I don't think we are speaking about the future anymore. That's already happening in several different businesses. And so, taking that comment in particular, I took the challenge. I was like, okay, let's keep playing with AI and deepfakes and see what we can get when we sync images and voices as well. Here's the result.
Hi, I am not Will Smith, but it could be literally anyone.
A famous basketball player.
Or a legendary quarterback.
Maybe a soccer striker. So, you want to know more about deepfakes? Follow me and subscribe into our next webinar. Thank you.
Yeah, I wanted to add a comment here because you mentioned like people were making those comments and the language was always about the future, right? And I'd say the main proof that this has been going on and this has been going on for a while is that news about the fake CEO that was able to convince the CFO to make a $20 million transfer. And this was like a large corporation, right? And this was over a year ago, right? And they were using voice cloning, they were using deepfakes, and this had like a real financial consequence for a large company. So this has been going on for a while. We work with a lot of banks, right? And they're always reporting that their facial recognition system was compromised and that fraudsters were able to create fake accounts or do like account takeovers, for example. So this is something that because we are in the industry, right? We've been hearing about this for many years. So it's very interesting when we see those reactions and people thinking about like, this is something that's coming from the future. No, this is reality. This has been going on for years, actually. It's just getting better. It's becoming more impressive. So it's interesting to see that reaction.
Yeah, for sure. And Andre, speaking about the CEO challenge, one of the comments was about this pose as the CEO. And also, I just put together the other comment. Can you put the three fingers in front of the face for me? I was like, okay, let me try to pose as the CEO of Incognia, André Ferraz, and also take the challenge of the three fingers in front of the face. And here's the result. Me, 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 me. Can you get three fingers in front of your face? So, honestly, we could be, I could be doing videos like this all day long, 5 days a week. But of course, I have other duties here at Incognia. But I think the most famous AI video that represents this entire evolution is the Will Smith eating pasta, right? So if you look at the model, what was doing in 2023, it's clearly AI generated, right? But as the time was passing, you see that in 2025, it was a lot more realistic. And nowadays, putting together Will Smith eating pasta, I could be eating pasta here, and you actually don't know if it's me or Will Smith. So I think my main message, Andre, for this first part is that the models are approaching a moment where it's impossible to distinguish between what you see from if it's generated by AI or not. It's just impossible. And so, even in the Will Smith deepfake, I got a lot of reposts saying we have a solution that detect deepfakes. We are building a solution that will detect if image was AI generated or not. Uh, and my take on that is that there's no such deepfake detection. And the reason why is because whenever you have something in place, the model will get better in just a few weeks. Or a few months, and you're going to be obsolete again. So it's a cat and mouse game. And if you take the approach of identifying if an image is AI generated or not, you're going to be in trouble because you won't be able to catch up. And just think about competition, right? We are talking about large enterprise companies spending billions of dollars in developing new models. Do you really think with yourself or a small group of people will be able to build something that can actually compete the detection with whatever those corporations are doing? I don't think that's the right angle, Andre.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's very asymmetric in terms of like the investment going towards improving the models, and you're talking about like some of the largest companies in the world competing for that, right? And investing like hundreds of billions in making this happen, versus yeah, much smaller companies trying to build the deepfake detection capability. So yeah, companies need to do better than just trying to identify the inconsistencies in the media, and actually have more of an approach in which they're analyzing this from multiple angles and multiple variables to try to address the problem. But this is all very interesting. Like the evolution of deepfakes and the quality of this is really becoming indistinguishable from reality. I actually saw a recent article on the New York Times about a professor from Berkeley who's a specialist in deepfakes, and one of the things he said was that well, I no longer can distinguish between a deep fake and a real video. So like even one of the most specialized people in the world on this topic got to the point in which he is not able to trust what his eyes are seeing when there is a screen in front of him. So I think this is here to stay and will only become more challenging. But I wanted to ask you more about like what is the consequence of this for businesses, right? Like how a fraudster, a bad actor, can use this kind of technology to try to make money and steal from like financial institutions and marketplaces and other digital platforms.
Sure. So we spoke about a lot about deepfakes, and for sure is the most impressive thing that I feel that materialized the evolution of AI and image generation. But it's not only about faces and voices, Andre. Imagine that you can now tamper with any sort of image or create an image from scratch exactly the way you want to. And so um, let's talk about AI generated image fraud, because now we are seeing that any businesses that is using images to validate a claim, a refund, authenticate a user is kind of exposed to that. I think the most obvious use case is bypassing a facial biometrics. And that's happening. That's happening everywhere, every day. We got complaints about companies around the world saying the facial biometric was bypassed by fraudsters. And we are trying to catch up and understand why. But this could apply to any sort of business. Let me give you one example with a food delivery company, for example. I won't mention the name of the platform, but let's assume I ordered a burger online with some French fries. And then this went viral recently with somebody on X saying, editing my pictures so I can get my money back on this platform. So he ordered a burger, he used the same image to go to one of those models, pretend the burger is raw, and claim for a refund, saying, "My burger is raw. I don't want that." And like, of course, the platform do not want to offer a bad user experience. And whenever something bad happens, the platform will refund the user. But here's the thing: whenever a user understand that the platform will give the money back, it's not going to be an isolated case anymore. And so let me give you another example of a consequence of this kind of image injection for
Eduardo,
delivery.
before you go there, just wanted to add a quick information here, because we do work with a lot of the food delivery companies, over 70% of them. And just for the audience benefit here, in food delivery, the biggest area of loss right now in terms of like growing fraud is around refunds and credit abuse, right? It's so like this is one way to do this. Also, there are other types of claim where people say like, oh, my food um, was cold, or there was a missing item, and they use that to get their money back. So refund abuse is a huge problem, and it will only accelerate with these tools, right? So it's really impressive to see the consequence.
Yeah, absolutely agree with this. And okay, in the case of this platform, let's assume the user got the refund. And then recently we went through a proof of value with another company claiming exactly the same. We are suffering with refund abuse, and whenever we integrated with them, look of what was happening, Andre. Just an example, this is a real world case. A single Samsung S23 Ultra was accessing 237 different accounts. And here, for sure, 237 different emails, pretty easy to get. 237 different phone numbers, pretty easy to get anywhere in the world as well. Made almost 200 transactions, transacting over $5,000, in which over 4,000 got refunded. So it's like it's going to the supermarket and buying groceries with 83% discount. I wish I could go to Safeway and do that right now, but I can't because I'm not a fraudster. And the reason why this platform in particular was not being able to detect such abuse is because they had a weak device ID that was not being able to link the bad accounts together. So they're just flying blind. And on top of that, the fraudsters were also using an app cloner called multiple accounts, app clone space. So we're going to get into more details about app cloners later today. But this is the first use case that there's nothing to do with deepfakes. It's just the same logic. You have an image, you tamper with them, and you ask for something. Let me go to another example. This just came by my LinkedIn recently, where a driver was accused of using AI generated image in a damage claim. So imagine you are a ride hailing platform, and I will pretend to be a driver. I create a fake account, and then after a few rides, I just upload this kind of image and ask for a refund from the platform, that will just have a look at the picture. In this case, the fraudster just forgot to remove the Gemini icon in the first image. And so if somebody is just looking at the image, I would say the likelihood of this platform actually giving the credit back to the driver is pretty high. And this will create a lot of trouble for the platform, because the platform will charge the end user who just did an average ride, did nothing, has nothing to do with this fake damage, but the user will be charged. So at the end, you have an abuser receiving money, you have the platform charging the end user a very poor user experience, and of course the user in this case is going to be pissed because nothing actually happened. So this is just another example of how AI images can bypass the security checks if you just try to see to believe. Another example, Andre, another use case, insurance claims. So there are a lot of companies taking advantage of technology just to get a picture to validate something. And that's the case of insurance claims. So you can just take a picture of a car, your car with the right plate, but then use one of those models to pretend there was a car accident or something like that. And then the new image will show a damage that is not real. And so look at this, record 230 million pounds in insurance claims as use of AI rises. Another use case, taking advantage of this new AI image tools. And last but not least, before compiling all the use cases together, this is a picture. It's just because I found the news, but I couldn't find actually the right image for that. And I was like, what if I try that myself? So this is a picture of my living room. I took it yesterday, and let's assume I created a listing on a vacation rental platform. And at the end of this rental, I just use this prompt, modify this exact image so the brown leather sectional sofa is completely destroyed. And whenever the rent is over, I could just go to a platform and say, somebody brought a dog to my house and my sofa is completely destroyed. I have to be refunded for this damage. Actually, my brown sofa is over there, completely clean, in perfect conditions, but that's not what this image is showing. And so, if a rental platform just use this image to validate whatever I'm saying or claiming, then it's going to be in trouble as well. This is another proof. We saw that recently, that a guest says images were altered in false 200,000 pounds damage claim. So again, this is happening everywhere. Deepfakes to bypass security checks, food delivery companies suffering with refund abuse, vacation rental platforms, insurance claims, whatever. Any business, Andre, that is using images to validate is going to be in trouble. So here's just a compilation of all different examples I could have think of. You can see fake documents being tampered with Gen AI. You actually have this news of AI generated passport passing a QIC check. And I'm not saying that QIC won't be a thing anymore, especially for regulatory reasons, right? It's going to still be there, but no, it's not game changer for fraud prevention anymore. We see the driver accused of using Gen AI image. You see the raw burger. you see a gas saying image was altered by a 200,000 damage claim. And last but not least, I just got this print screen from another webinar that we did recently, where Elon Musk joined live, and of course it was also a deepfake. So just going to one of the questions in the chat, there are different models of doing this. You can do it live, you can do it recording a video and uploading it later. There are just so many ways. And then if you can use a deepfake like this, on top of harming any sort of business, you can also use this to do social engineering and convince somebody to do something that they shouldn't be doing. Ask for money, say you're in trouble. You can pretend to be somebody else and reach out to a family member, whatever. There are just so many use cases that we are seeing growth in fraud related to AI generated fraud. Just another evidence, because I like to prove everything I'm saying, Andre. This is a print screen from a Telegram group here in California, where there are just a bunch of available fake documents online, and the fraudsters are just doing this to bypass QIC and create fake drivers accounts.
Yeah, that's impressive. So basically we're talking about multiple ways in which deepfakes can be used to game the system, right? We're talking about insurance claims, we're talking about refund requests on marketplaces and delivery companies, and even like ride sharing businesses. You have like fraud on the driver side of ride sharing companies, right? On the host side, on vacation rental companies. By the way, I was a victim of this one. So I rented a place for a weekend, and when I left, the host claimed that I had like destroyed like a tabletop, etc., and it was using like fake images, and they were asking for a $6,000 payment, and obviously we didn't pay. Like we went through the whole process of like showing that we didn't do that, and but the platform had to do an in-person audit of the property to validate the situation, right? So it was a huge cost for the platform to go all the way there and see that this was fake. The host was then banned from the platform. But it's impressive, like how these things really affect us. And you're also talking about fake accounts here, right? Which is very popular. So in this case, you're showing a Telegram group, right, where fake drivers in California are selling accounts so that they can work on food delivery platforms. They can also work on ride sharing businesses without having the documentation to be able to do that. So also impressive. And also the social engineering examples, which, as you mentioned, like it can happen live. The examples we've shown here demonstrate that this can happen both offline but also live, which is also impressive. I wanted to touch on another topic here real quick, which is also about the accessibility of these tools, right? Like most of the things that you were showing here, they're either free or they're very inexpensive, right? They're very cheap to use. It's usually like a $10 subscription, a $20 subscription. But if you are a professional fraudster, you're making money, you're certainly going to pay for the best tools, right? And we're not just talking about the frontier models that are enabling this. Like you also have many open source models that enable you to do these things. They have very similar capabilities. Most people say that the open source models, especially the ones from China, are about like 6 months behind the frontier models from Anthropic, OpenAI, and Google. So it's very close. It's very similar. You're not that far. So these things are free. They're open source. You can download it. You can run on your own. server, and you can do a lot of damage with it if you know how to use it. So the next topic here is about image injection, right? So I wanted to ask you, like, how are these things being used in a more practical sense, right? Because one thing is generating those deepfakes, the other thing is using it to trick a system. So I wanted you to share a little bit more how this is happening.
Yeah, that's very interesting, Andre, because most of the people can just think, all right, what about I just force the end user, instead of uploading any image or video, I can just ask the user to use the live camera of the application. And then by doing this, I'm safe, right? But actually, you're not safe yet. This is an example we got from from a customer where they started forcing the user to actually take a selfie using the live camera capture. But then we started seeing some app tampering activities, and I was like, those accounts are bad for sure. And then whenever they started investigating in more detail, they saw the exact same image being used in different accounts. So, Andre, think with me. If you're actually capturing the camera in real time, how is it possible you have the exact same image across different accounts, logging in different moments, and authenticating in different moments? Straight answer, you can't. If you're forcing the live camera capture and you're seeing the same image showing up over and over, it means fraudsters are bypassing the live camera. So let's talk about image injection and the technique to do that. So it's actually using a technique called app cloner or app tampering, in which fraudsters are being able to use this tool called fake camera. So if we just read this feature, it allows selecting a picture from the gallery to use instead of real live camera picture when pressing the shutter button. So I'm not sure if the audience is familiar yet with what an app cloner is. You have a bunch of them available on the app stores, but one of them is kind of very harmful. You can see this GIF, one example of Telegram being cloned multiple times. And what they're actually doing is doing reverse engineering of this application. During this reverse engineering, what they're doing now is selecting whatever data they want to tamper with. So you can see here 10 clones changing Android ID, for example, which, by the way, a lot of companies uses that as a proxy for device, is extremely weak. Don't do that, because just using a toggle in a tool like this, whenever this scenario is completed, at the end, the fraudster will have multiple instances of your application communicating with your servers, and each of these instances of a clone will have different data tampered with. Each of them with a different Google ID, each of them with a different configuration, each of them with a different device model. Fraudsters are being able to do whatever they want, including faking the camera. So this is just another example that we used one of this tool, and then whenever we had to take the picture live, we were just able to create an account using the face of this dog, which is kind of scary. This is the proof that enforcing the live camera is not enough to a platform to be safe against this kind of scam. And so just want to pause it real quick, Andre, because in case you are not sure if your platform is vulnerable to this kind of image injection, this QR code will lead you to a web page where you can fill your details, and then we're going to do a free vulnerability test for you. So if you're not sure, you can just scan this QR code and submit this free vulnerability test, and then just give us a few days. So we're gonna go back to you, showing if your platform is vulnerable or not.
Amazing. Well, and I can share here with the audience, like we tested some of the largest apps in the world, and the vast majority of them are vulnerable. We're talking about like some of the largest search platforms that I won't mention names, some of the largest AI platforms, some of the largest social media platforms, some of the largest marketplaces, financial institutions. They were all vulnerable. Like even some of the biggest banks in the world, they were vulnerable to this. So yeah, there is an awareness problem in the industry about this kind of issue, but fake camera is a real problem, and fraudsters can do this with no technical knowledge, right? You can just download the app and you can do whatever you want with this application. Not just the fake camera, right, but many other features. And what is actually quite impressive is that you have other like more technical ways of doing this using like instrumentation tools, more advanced tampering, like coding something yourself, exploiting the vulnerabilities, and especially now where you have like AI tools like the new version of ChatGPT 5.5 and Mythos from Anthropic, they can really find vulnerabilities with very quickly and with a high degree of sophistication. This is going to become way more frequent. So important to keep an eye on these things. And well, let's switch topics here. Eduardo, can you go to the? Oh, go ahead.
I can, but just before we switch topics, this is the last example I wanted to share, especially for the ones who
Sure.
thinks this is a future thing. This was posted recently by law enforcement, of a gang that was being able to use those deepfakes to create bank accounts one after the other. And before this gang was able to get over $20 million in less than a year. So it's a lot of money. It's already happening. And as you can see, fraudsters are being able to pretend they are a lot of different people, and they're not.
Yeah, yeah, that's impressive. And I think this attack led to like $20 million in stolen money. So it's there's real consequence. Speaking of how accessible these tools are, I also wanted to show you like just one example of how accessible other things like voice cloning are right now. So here's a page of one of the most successful companies in the voice cloning space. 11 Labs is a multi-billion-dollar business. You can just go to their website and you can clone your voice for free. But what this also means is that you can clone anyone's voice for free, right? So if you go to the social media page of any person that you know that you want to clone their voice, you're probably going to find a video of this person online, right? And you can just get that video, upload to a platform like this, and you now like have control to use their voice for anything you want. It might be a celebrity, it might be someone speaking on a webinar like us here, right? So everyone who's posting their voice and their videos online are vulnerable. And we're talking about the majority of the population, right? The vast majority of people are posting like stories on Instagram and videos on TikTok and videos on YouTube. So all of this data is being voluntarily breached out there, right? Which makes it a tool that can be used for social engineering, and these things can now be used for free. The next part here that I wanted to cover is also the automation side of things, right? Because we covered images, we covered videos, we covered voice. Let's talk now about automation. So one of the interesting things that we saw recently in this space was going back to the app cloner side. Now you have the ability to connect it to agents. On the next slide here, you have this agent-friendly app cloner. So the same software that we were showing previously, and Eduardo mentioned here that there are like many other app cloner applications out there. We're talking about hundreds. Now you can connect it to an MCP server so that an AI agent can control the application, right? So if you already had the ability to create multiple instances of an application, to modify that application in the way you want it, right? So replacing the camera with a fake camera, replacing the identifiers with something else, replacing like spoofing the GPS information, the IP address of the device. Now you can do that automatically at scale, right? So the fraudsters that build these tools, they're investing on bringing these tools to the age of AI, which makes it a lot scary. And the thing is, AI is the biggest enabler of fraud right now, and we're still in the very early stages. But here's one very good example about how AI is being used for that. The other thing is on the device farm side of things, which is something that we've been seeing for many years. This is also becoming more sophisticated, right? So what is a device farm? Is basically when a fraudster has access to multiple devices and they use all of these devices to commit fraud at larger scale. And this is not an uncommon thing. This is not something that it's like an exception. It's actually the rule. Just to give you a sense, on Incognia's network, we have data to see that about 60% of the fraudsters, they operate with at least 10 devices. But there are cases in which fraudsters are operating with a lot more devices. Recently, for example, a bank that was testing our technology, we found a case of a fraudster in a single apartment using 200 devices. And with that, they were able to manage 4,500 accounts. We're talking about more than 4,000 accounts being managed by a single individual, right? How was this possible? Well, they had 200 devices, but also they were resetting these devices all the time. So each of these devices would generate a new device identifier. So that bank thought they had the protection because they were able to do device fingerprinting. And with the device fingerprint, they were able to like identify that device, identify if that device committed fraud and block it. And what they had in mind was, oh, we are blocking the devices that committed fraud. What they didn't know was that if that device went through a factory reset process, it would generate a new device identifier, and that same device was going to be able to commit fraud on their platform again. So you may think, well, but the resetting a device may take a long time. It usually takes like 40 minutes, 50 minutes, right? No, it's not the case anymore, because the tools that fraudsters are using are enabling them to reset a device in less than a minute. You have tools that enable you to reset an iPhone, for example, in 30 seconds, which means that if you're using a device fingerprinting solution and you think you're protected, you are not. Device fingerprinting doesn't work anymore, okay? So when you combine these layers, a device farm, device resets, AI agents enabling you to control software like app cloners, you can basically scale up this whole process very quickly. And you can see here on the right side that we're not just talking about AI doing like stuff purely digitally. We're also talking about AI doing stuff in the physical world. So for example, here you have a robot that was actually a 3D printer that was adapted for a fraud use case, in which the robot is able to type on the keyboard and basically like manage that device as if it was like fingers pressing all these buttons, right? So yeah, the 3D printers have now been adapted to become robots for fraud. So this can defeat, for example, things like behavioral biometrics, which was also a promising thing a few years ago, but it's becoming less effective because of the use of AI and agents and robotics. So the entire stack for fraud prevention is being disrupted by now by AI right now, all the way from identity verification, facial recognition, device fingerprinting, behavioral biometrics, and many other layers of the stack. And obviously, like social engineering being a huge component here, enabling fraudsters to more easily gain access to one-time passcodes, passwords, convince users to give away their credentials. So when you bring all of this together, you can see that the entire fraud prevention and authentication stack is highly vulnerable right now. So in the next slide here, I wanted to basically talk a bit about this dangerous combination of AI-driven fraud and fraud as a service. So as I was covering right now, a lot of stuff going on, right? Like a lot of layers of the stack are currently vulnerable. So just wanted to provide a little bit more detail about these layers and why these layers are now vulnerable. So first of all, starting with AI-driven frauds, we covered in the beginning, deepfake fraud, right? This is affecting identity verification, refunds, insurance claims, and other things, right? What does it mean? Any verification process that is based on providing documents, providing pictures, or doing biometrics, these things are now vulnerable to these attacks. Second here, agentic social engineering and phishing. What do I mean by agentic social engineering and phishing? So how did phishing campaigns used to work in the past, right? You would get a list of phone numbers or a list of email addresses, and you would blast that list with a message saying that you are from the telco, or saying that you are from the bank or for a merchant, and bringing a scary message that would try to convince users to click on the link and authenticate to something, but it was a fake link that would lead to a fake landing page. And with that, you would capture the user's credentials, for example, or the link would have malware, and then you would be able to access that device remotely using a remote access tool, for example, and things like that, right? Social engineering, how social engineering used to work in the past, right? Someone would call you and say that they were from the bank, for example, and they would convince you to send money to a secure account because your account was currently compromised and things like that. So that is the banking impersonation scam, for example. Or there's the social engineering that occur on social media platforms or in dating applications. This was how it used to work in the past. Nowadays, this has changed dramatically, and we are already seeing this on the ground. How is this working today? So for social engineering, instead of calling each person individually, you can simply have an agent using voice AI to call multiple people at the same time. So you're able to attack multiple individuals in parallel, and whoever indicates signs that they are going to fall for the scam, you can intervene and join that call. So you're basically, instead of like going one step at a time, one victim at a time, you can attack 10 people at a time, 100 people at a time, and be a lot more effective. For phishing, instead of sending a generic email or text to hundreds or thousands of people and playing a numbers game in which a lot are not going to fall for it, but a few will, you can now send a personalized message for each individual based on what they're posting on social media, based on information that you captured from them on a data breach, for example. So phishing and social engineering are becoming a lot more effective now because of this. And again, we are already seeing this on the ground. So OTPs, passwords, knowledge-based authentication, highly, highly vulnerable right now because of the use of agents for social engineering and phishing. And then finally, still on AI-driven fraud, you also have agentic fraud. So the agent itself going all the way and committing the fraud, authenticating on behalf of someone else, logging in, making a transaction, etc. The problem is these agents are able to behave just like a human. They move the mouse, they navigate the screen, they're typing like a human. You can configure the agent to do all that, right? And this defeats things like behavior biometrics, which was very good to detect bot activity, for example. So AI-driven fraud is enabling way more effective fraudulent activity. And then on the other side of things, fraud as a service, as I mentioned, now you can reset an iPhone in 30 seconds. You can build a device farm. You can use tampering, emulators, app cloners, which means that device fingerprinting, device intelligence no longer works as it used to do in the past. Fake camera, image injection, affecting biometrics and document proof directly. So you need to figure out how to address it. Data breaches, enabling social engineers to be more effective, but also enabling fraudsters to create synthetic identities more easily. And just to wrap up here, because I know this is a lot, there is a positive message here. Obviously, as we were able to cover, deepfake detection is becoming extremely challenging. The way in which this is evolving is very fast, but there are ways to protect against it, right? So you can use live camera collection combined with strong app tamper detection to detect image injection and fake cameras. And for the AI-driven attacks, I would say the main message here is don't rely on pixels, don't rely on digital signals. You need to have a multi-layered approach that is grounded on data about what's happening in the physical world. Because there's only one thing that AI won't be able to fake, is what's happening in the physical world. So if you find ways to collect data about what is happening in the real world, you're in a better position. So things like device and indoor location signals can get you there. So I know we covered a lot of ground here. I'm going to leave the next 7 minutes for us to cover Q&A, and we have a lot of very interesting questions from the audience. So let's cover a few here. So Eduardo, let me take a few ones, and then I'll leave you to get the others.
Sure.
So there's one question from Felipe about these videos can clearly beat the human viewer, but are there model fingerprints, watermarks, or metadata in the resulting outputs that detection tools can hammer on? For sure, if you're using something like Gemini, for example, or if you're using something like OpenAI and Anthropic's models, you're certainly going to have some additional information that may help you identify that this is a deep fake. But what the problem is, many fraudsters are using the open source versions in which they have a lot more control, and they can remove those watermarks. They can remove those fingerprints. So this is the problem. Like, the fraudsters are actually not using, in many cases, the most open tools that are out there. They're actually trying to find tools that they can have more control, so they can remove these things. So this is one of the key challenges. The next question we have here is if I think this one is for you, Eduardo. Did you use a website or a local tool to create these videos? Can they be used live or only a video file output?
That's a really good question, Chris. So the answer is depends. I shared today some of the examples that are only video file output, but there are several tools that you can do pretty much everything we did and demonstrated today live. So we also heard about fake candidates interviews and live camera image injection. So you can do whatever you want at this point.
Yep. Well, there's another comment here from Felipe. In the two examples provided, I understand the point of AI-generated images, but it's the exact same vulnerability as anyone using Photoshop with some skill for the last 20 years. Completely agree. You could do this in the past. The difference here is how accessible this is, right? So nowadays, someone that doesn't have that knowledge can do it, and can do it very quickly, right? Even someone with knowledge on Photoshop, they would take like minutes or hours to be able to do all that. But now with one prompt, you wait a few seconds and you get it, right? So now everyone can commit this type of fraud, not only the specialists. And this is the problem. When the tool enables every single person to be able to commit fraud, this makes it a lot more scalable.
We have another one, Andre, from Marcelini de Fatima. If we believe organizations are value investing for awareness in social engineering techniques, the answer for that question, and I used to question a lot banks and financial services, like if you're just relying on your user not to be tricked by AI, you're certainly wrong. You're leaving your customers exposed. And the main thing is, as a bank or as a financial institution, you have to be ready to defend your customers, even when a fraudster is able to get their OTP, their whole credentials. Even with that information, a good security system won't allow a fraudster to get in.
Yeah, I'll be very honest here about my opinion on this topic. Whenever I see someone from a bank, like claiming that a certain fraud occurred because their user, their customer was unaware, or they were not trained, and it was the customer's fault, I think the person is not doing their job as a fraud fighter. A fraud fighter is responsible for ensuring that the systems are in place so that the bank does not depend on their users, their customers becoming cybersecurity specialists, because this is not going to happen, right? Like, people have a lot of things to take care of in their lives. They're not going to spend time becoming a specialist in cyber attacks and like hacking and social engineering. And the social engineers, they are professionals, right? They do this for a living. So relying on trying to train a user to become as aware as a professional that does that for a living is very unfair. So I believe that it is an important investment. The banks should continue to run campaigns to try to educate their users, but this should not be the strategy. This is just a very small thing that will probably move the needle, but just a little bit. But what really moves the needle is technology. And there are technologies here that can solve these problems. There is, for example, lots of like phishing resistant authentication solutions, like I mentioned here, like device and indoor location, for example, is a way to eliminate the social engineering problem entirely. You also have many ways to validate this user using like multiple layers, so that if an attacker is trying to convince them to send money elsewhere, you can see like, oh, this user is actively in a call, or there is a remote access Trojan installed on that device that is enabling the fraudster to take control of that device. You were able to analyze the account that is being that the money has been sent to, and analyze if that account is a mule account or a fake account, for example. So there's so many technologies that can prevent social engineering, that relying on training the users doesn't really seem to be the correct strategy. So I support it, but I would say is the least important thing that can be done, because there's technology to solve it. So, well, I think that's a wrap. Really great questions. I think it was a good discussion. I hope everybody enjoyed the content here. If you want to continue the conversation, Eduardo and we are on LinkedIn. Feel free to add us, send messages. We'll be happy to engage and talk more. As Eduardo mentioned here, if you want to test your application to see if it is vulnerable to app cloning and image injection, we're happy to do that. And just wanted to close here with a final message, which is don't trust pixels, don't trust digital signals. You need something better. You need to really rely on the one thing that AI cannot fake, which is what's happening in the physical world, what is happening in the real world. So try to think about what are the signals that can help you understand the reality of that user in the physical world, and understand if any online transaction is originating from a real person in the real life. Okay. And I think that's it. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. See you.
See you all.